six episodes of Hawkeye are now streaming on Disney+. This is the newest show in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and before we get started, there are going to be some spoilers in this review. You have been warned. I essentially decided to wait an extra day on this review because, one, The Matrix Resurrections came out yesterday, and my focus was kind of on that, but also because the season finale premiered, and while I usually drop these reviews immediately after, I figured let me give people some extra time to then, watch it and then talk about it more in detail. So without further ado, here we go. As you may have guessed, Hawkeye focuses more on Clint Barton, Jeremy Renner's story, rather than any other Avenger, which makes sense because he's the only one so far who didn't get any kind of story to himself. In this, you're seeing him deal with the fallout of events that happened between Infinity War and Endgame, all the stuff that he did as Ronin, and eventually the stuff that happened regarding the Soul Stone with Natasha Romanoff. However, there is trouble brewing in the city because it turns out another Archer is going around trying to take on a gang called the Tracksuits, and eventually she ends up in Hawkeye's crosshairs. This is Kate Bishop, played by Haley Steinfeld, and eventually the two of them have to partner up to stop whatever is going on because it turns out that the Tracksuits are after Ronin, and Ronin seems to have been gone for many, many years, but it seems like there's a connection over there, and so Hawkeye becomes a primary target. I was excited for the show, honestly. I know a lot of people don't necessarily love Hawkeye as a character, but I feel like with individual projects like this, there was an opportunity to strengthen these characters more so than before. And sometimes that can reap some really great results. I remember there was a point in time when Aquaman in DC used to be the joke, hey, who cares about Aquaman? And now people can't wait for the sequel. The original first movie made $1 billion, and it's like Hawkeye has a chance to get that moment in the spotlight, but also because of Kate Bishop. I think that is a fascinating character to introduce into the MCU, and Haley Steinfeld was one of those casting choices that was going around for a long, long time. A lot of people wanted to see her take on this role. Right out the gate, I'm going to start with that positive. Steinfeld is incredible. She's one of the best actresses, honestly, working today. She's doing so many different things. She's in so many different mediums right now, and all of them she's giving terrific performances. Not only is she in an animated medium with Spider-Verse and stuff like that, she's also got other stuff in television like Dickinson going on, and if you have not seen that, definitely check it out. She's really great in it. But she brings a presence to the entire thing, which is really awesome, and she's having so much fun with this role. You can tell throughout the entire series. She is inspired by Hawkeye because of the events that took place in New York in 2012, and so when she sees him carry out a heroic feat that eventually ends up saving her, she obviously is inspired to take up archery of herself, and then she becomes pretty much an expert marksman. And so when she's going up against bad guys alongside Clint Barton, it's pretty great, and you get some pretty cool moments as a result of that, and the camaraderie that builds between her and Clint is really cool. There's a lovely sequence in episode 3 where Clint is trying to talk to his kid, but it turns out due to all of the events that have happened, he can't really hear from 1 year anymore. And so he cannot hear the actual phone call happening, and so in that particular moment, Kate is kind of writing down all these notes and he's being able to have a conversation with his son. I thought that was really, really cool, and it was a wonderful little moment. Might be one of the best character moments that the MCU has ever had. And Jeremy Renner is also really good in this. He was deliberately deadpanned at times because you can tell that this is a guy who's like, listen, I'm just trying to have a vacation with my kids. I'm exhausted. I really don't need to deal with this shit. And the first couple of episodes in particular, when he first gets involved, you can clearly tell he's like, why am I in this? Can I just not catch a break? And unfortunately, no, he cannot. And I think he played the role pretty well. I actually quite like Renner as Hawkeye. I sometimes go on social media and I guess there is an impression over there that he's just the worst. In terms of like an Avenger and as a character. But I've never really minded him, and I really liked him as Ronin in Endgame, and so I was excited to see that persona a little bit more, and you do get that eventually, and I think he did a really good job of it. As far as everyone else in the show goes, everybody's really, really good. I liked Alaqua Cox as Maya. I thought she was very cool, and the leader of the Tracksuits, as she was also deaf, her performance is based so much with sign language and stuff like that. I thought she did a really, really good job, and she actually is deaf in real life, and so that really came through in some sequences, and there are moments where her emotions were really wonderfully handled. She was a really, really good character. And since we're going into spoilers in this review, Yelena Belova, played once again by Florence Pugh, shows up and she's excellent. I thought she was the standout in Black Widow by a long mile, and I think over here she's excellent. There's a scene with her and Kate that's really, really well handled. She's obviously there because she's out to get Clint Barton because of what happened, because she believes that he's responsible for Natasha's death. And so that arc, when it does commence, it definitely does go, it goes the places that I expected it to, but we'll talk more about that later. The action is very much street level, and I thought that was really nice because it's a break from the usual mega CGI budget stuff that you get in the MCU. It's not something as big as Spider-Man No Way Home, for instance, or Shang-Chi or Eternals. It's something much more smaller scale. And I like the fact that it focuses more on things that are happening, like on a human level. Like, you realize that if one shot goes in the way of these characters, they will die or they will get seriously injured. And there are injuries in this that all these characters do take. In fact, Kate spends like 4 episodes with like cuts and bruises on her face. And so does Clint. So I just thought, like, the fact that they were able to create that sort of, grounded effect, I think it really, really helped. Seeing all of those sequences was also really cool. There's a one-shot in episode 3 that was really fun. And like I said, because it's more character-based, it helps you care about them a lot more. I actually had a fun time watching a lot of the episodes. They're very entertaining. And the Christmas vibes that are there throughout, with the musical score as well by Christoph Beck, all of that is really, really well handled. In fact, the Christmas vibes were actually kind of funny at times because they'll be in these dark sequences and then a Christmas song, a famous one, will have an instrumental version of that play over it. I thought that was really cool. Like, that was actually happening in some major moments. I think it just added to the vibes really, really nicely. Vera Farmiga as Eleanor Bishop, I thought was also really good in this. She doesn't have so much to do. Like, she is an important character eventually, but yeah, I think she did good. I would have liked to have seen more of her though, because I think Vera Farmiga is a great actress. I think that she can add a lot more to something, and sometimes it comes under that thing of Marvel casting major named actors and they eventually end up not doing way more than they probably could. So I think that could have been a little bit better. I quite like the story it's dealing with. I like the idea of Clint facing his demons, trying to figure out how he can get past what happened while he was Ronin and the things that he's done, and eventually seeing all of that play out in different characters, especially Maya, because Ronin is the person who basically, got, her father killed, actually killed him. And so when you're seeing that play out, it's like it's definitely giving you an idea as to what catastrophic things that Ronin did that, of course, now he's going to have to answer for. I do think that there is a pro and a con here. I like the fact that the show addresses it, because I remember in Endgame, I was like, are we not going to address the fact that this guy was basically just murdering the Yakuza cold-blooded? Like, even though they're not exactly like the best people there, yes, they're gangsters, it's like the way he's going at them, and like you almost are like, hey, have some mercy, take a step back here. But then when you're watching this also, you have that same kind of feeling to it. And so whenever the show deals with that aspect of it and the fact that he has those demons that he is, trying to deal with, it definitely hits home really well. There's a scene in particular in episode 4 where Kate is talking to Clint about being Ronin, because a lot of the show is them trying to figure out that he's Ronin, and once they do, it's like, oh my gosh, there was a lot of stuff that happened. And once you start addressing that, it's great. But the con is that it doesn't go into it as much as I thought it would. I think the biggest issue for me with this entire season was the lack of emotional depth. Like, there was some of it, but there were moments of it where I thought it could have gone a little more into the things that have happened, the things that have been seen and done by Clint, and all of those repercussions. But for a long time, the show was much more lighthearted, especially with the tracksuit gang. They're just comedy. Like, all of these guys are just Russians going around in red tracksuits saying bro at the end of each sentence, and then they're just there to be a lot funnier, and yet at moments they'll probably throw a punch here or there, but they're quite disposable, really. And I don't know if they added much of a threat level after a while. Like, they seemed like they were dangerous people, but they were taking care of them so easily, Clint and Kate, that I thought, So what exactly is the threat here? Until one point towards the season ending, like during episode 6, I thought, oh, now they're doing something. But it's really just this one guy, Kazi, who's doing something. Everyone else is just like a dumb henchman sort of character. And eventually the season becomes more about Yelena versus Clint, and then that's the main thing that he has to deal with. And so that becomes the major crux of it. Let's talk about the thing that everybody wants to talk about, though, the main villain. So at the end of all of this, they keep referring to a boss, a big figure who is handling the entire thing. Now, a lot of people speculated this was going to be Kingpin, because it seemed to be what they were hinting towards. There's a moment in episode 3 in a flashback with Maya where Uncle puts a hand on her and there's like a chuckle which sounded like Vincent D'Onofrio. And yes, it is Vincent D'Onofrio. You do see Kingpin in this, which obviously, along with spoilers for No Way Home, I suppose, along with Matt Murdock in Spider-Man No Way Home, is pretty much confirmation that this is actually happening. Now we're getting this Netflix, universe into this, and we're establishing that all of this is canon. So I think that's cool. But seeing Vincent D'Onofrio once again as the character was chilling. He definitely added an imposing presence to the entire show in that last episode, really, when he shows up. And it was great. It was great seeing him again. I think now this officially is like, oh, he's arguably the best villain the MCU has ever had. He's terrific in it. And when he comes, he's just as menacing as ever. It is funny seeing him in a presence that's not, TVMA, but it's pretty close. He's still got that menacing approach to him. There was a scene between him and Kate in particular that was like, yeah, you can still feel this guy's punches and hits. So definitely do have to, give praise to that fact. They're directed very well, these episodes, I must say. But let's talk about the season finale a little bit, because once again, it feels like some things they do right, but except for, I think, Loki, all of the season finales for these shows feel a little rushed. Like they're trying to tie up everything as quickly as possible without actually trying to emphasize on a few things. Save for one detail in the season finale of this between him and Yelena, where they get some kind of emotional closure of sorts. There's not much in terms of like closure. It just ends. Things just stop being a thing. And I don't quite understand what they're trying to do with that. Obviously, they're trying to set up things going forward for other characters, I assume so. But it just feels like there were so many things that were still left on the table that weren't given the kind of elaboration that I think they needed. Especially with Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. There's a thing that they do with him, which, like I said, this is a spoiler review, so I'm going to talk about it, where Maya discovers that the attack with Ronin was also somehow staged, and like it was something that Wilson ordered because it's like he wanted her father killed. And so she finally confronts him. She gets through from Kazi and all of these guys in the tracksuits, and eventually the camera pans up as she corners him, and there's a gunshot heard, and you're apparently given this idea that he's been shot down. Now, this is a thing that's in the comics as well, and something my friend pointed out is that he does take the bullets, but it blinds him. I don't know if they're going to do the blinding thing in this, but I am not opposed to the idea of he gets shot down, he ends up in the alley, and then he still survives because he's Kingpin. There's no way he's going down like that. I just don't see that potential scenario happening. It's kind of like I remember Vincent Bethel's character, what was his name? Bullseye in Daredevil season 3, where I thought, oh, he's dead, and then at the end of season 3 they were like, no, he's still alive. There's an end credits scene. I feel like that's the same thing that's going to happen with him. I just don't see them actually coming to a point where they finally introduce this character into the major stuff, have him integrated into the world of the Avengers more so than the Netflix shows did, only to get rid of him immediately after. I just don't see that happening. And yeah, I just wanted to address that because there seems to be a lot of chatter about it. But overall, did I still enjoy Hawkeye as a show? Absolutely. I still think it worked. I still think that Haley Steinfeld and Jeremy Renner brought it home really well. I think the dog, Lucky, or Pizza Dog, whatever you want to call him, I think he was adorable. He added a lot of lovely, funny moments. There's a LARPing group at one point in time that I thought was really cool. There's this one guy in particular, I think his name is Griggs. Griggs was awesome. Really liked all of that stuff, and like I said, Yelena really adds a lot to this as well. I think it could have been a little deeper in terms of its storytelling, and I think that's where it really suffered. But overall, I was very pleased with what I saw in Hawkeye for the most part, and I will give it a B+. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.